Here's a couple of interesting psychological studies that show how you can pre-format somebody's brain subconsciously so they'll be much more willing to do whatever you want them to do for their own subconscious reasons without really knowing what's happening. In the first case, they had a young woman approach a guy on the street. And she asked the guy on the street, she said, "See those four tough-looking dudes over there? They took my phone. Can you help me get my phone back?" Now, the young woman was part of the experiment. The young, attractive woman was part of the experiment. The four tough-looking dudes were part of the experiment. The mark was the guy she approached. And in all cases, about 10% of the time, the guy would help her get her phone back or actually start walking over there before they told him it was an experiment. But then they pre-framed this scenario under two different situations. Another girl would first approach the guy and ask either for location A or location B. She would walk up and say, "Excuse me, I'm looking for location A. Can you give me directions?" Or she would walk up to the guy and say, "Excuse me, I'm looking for location B. Can you give me directions?" Then he would give directions. Then the real girl would come up and say, "Can you help me get my phone back?" When they asked for location A, it didn't change the numbers. Still, only 10% of dudes later would help her get her phone back. But location B, simply because of the name of location B, it increased the success rate to 40%. Simply by asking this random question for a random direction to a name, the name of the place she was asking directions for, that somehow did something to his brain. So it went from 10% to help her get her phone back to 40% help her get her phone back. In another study, they gave these mock job interviewers a clipboard with a resume, and they had them talk to people about the resume, or the person came in, had the resume, they would talk to them, then they would fill out a questionnaire based on their perceived qualifications. And in every case, the same person came in with the same resume, with the same qualifications, and they were coached to give the same answers. But in half the cases, the mock interviewer, the test subject, had a very lightweight clipboard. And the other half, they had a very, very heavy clipboard. And when they had a heavy clipboard, they perceived the applicant as having much stronger qualifications, even though they were presented the same way. So simply by holding something heavy, they changed how they perceived the person talking to them. This is exactly how she taught her clients how to become much more successful in sales. She came up with a series of random sounding questions. And when the salespeople that she was training asked their customers these series of random sounding questions, it increased their conversions from 10% to about 60%. And these random sounding questions had nothing to do with the product or service. They were just these random questions that were used during the rapport building process with their customers. And that's how she took the salespeople from a closing rate of 10% to a closing rate of 60%. Simply by asking a bunch of random sounding questions, they 6 times increased their sales income, their commissions. The first street was a regular sounding street, but the second street, the name of the street was Valentine Street. And when a young, attractive woman asked for directions to Valentine Street, this subconsciously called up ideas of romantic and sexual encounters. And once their brain was subconsciously primed with romantic and sexual encounters based on the address she was looking for, Valentine Street, they had a 40% chance, 4 times the previous level, of helping the other girl, the second girl, get her phone back. And that is exactly how you can use psychology to subconsciously prime people's brains so they'll be much more likely to do whatever you want them to do. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.